before cities, before writing, before kings and armies and walls of stone, there was only the dark, and in that dark, something hunted you. "10,000 years ago, the earth looked nothing like it does today. The land was wilder, colder, alive in ways we can barely imagine. There were no roads, no fences, no borders, just endless forests stretching to the horizon in every direction, rivers that no human had ever named, mountains no one had ever climbed. The world was vast, and people were small. Right now, the entire human population on Earth was fewer than 10 million souls. Think about that. Today, New York City alone holds more people than the entire human race did back then. They were scattered, tiny groups of 30, 40, maybe 50 people, moving through the wilderness like ghosts. They had no word for country, no word for government. The only thing that mattered was the tribe, your people, the ones who kept the fire burning, because when the fire went out, the dark came in, and the dark was not empty. 10,000 years ago, the earth looked nothing like it does today. The land was wilder, colder, alive in ways we can barely imagine. There were no roads, no fences, no borders, just endless forest. Stretching to the horizon in every direction, rivers that no human had ever named, mountains no one had ever climbed. The world was vast, and people were small. Right now, the entire human population on Earth was fewer than 10 million souls. Think about that. Today, New York City alone holds more people than the entire human race did back then. They were scattered, tiny groups of 30, 40, maybe 50 people, moving through the wilderness like ghosts. They had no word for country, no word for government. The only thing that mattered was the tribe, your people, the ones who kept the fire burning. Because when the fire went out, the dark came in, and the dark was not empty. But let's go back to the forest. It is dawn now. The woman and her group have stopped near a frozen stream. The older man, the one everyone calls father, though he may not be anyone's actual father, kneels at the water's edge, pressing his hand through the ice to reach the cold black water below. He drinks, then listens. Sound. Wind through trees, a distant crack of a branch. Voiceover. Listening was a skill, a survival skill. Every sound in the forest meant something. A certain bird call meant predators nearby. Silence from the trees above meant something large was moving below. The animals of this time were not the animals we know today. The woolly mammoth still walked the earth, though barely. Herds had once stretched for miles. Now they were smaller, thinner, retreating north as the climate slowly warmed. Giant ground sloths the size of cars still roamed parts of the Americas. Cave lions and cave bears haunted Europe, bigger than any lion alive today, and the Irish elk. Imagine a deer, but with antlers spanning 12 feet wide, 12 feet, wider than a school bus. And it was real. But the most dangerous predator in the forest was not an animal. It was another group of humans. Territory mattered. Food mattered. When two groups ran into each other near the same hunting ground, it rarely ended with a handshake. Archaeologists have found ancient skeletons, 12,000 years old, with spear tips buried in their bones. Evidence of organized violence, raids, ambushes. The woman knew this, the group knew this, which is why, when the older man suddenly stood up and raised his hand for silence, everyone froze. Across the stream, movement, something parting the bushes, breath held, spears raised, and then a deer stepped out of the tree line. Just a deer. The tension broke like a wave. Someone let out a long, quiet breath. The man closest to the deer moved slowly, body low to the ground. He had been hunting since he was 8 years old. He knew how to disappear. The deer lifted its head, looked directly at him. He threw. The spear flew 30 feet and struck clean. There was a moment, just a moment, where every person in the group stood very still. Then someone made a sound, not a word, just a sound, like relief, like gratitude, like prayer they would eat tonight. This was the world 10,000 years ago. Not all darkness, not all fear. There were moments of warmth, of laughter, of love so deep it had no name yet. But something was changing. Far to the south, in a crescent of land between two great rivers in what we now call the Middle East, a different kind of human was doing something no one had ever done before. They were staying. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans had followed the animals. When the herds moved, the people moved. When the seasons changed, the people changed with them. But around 12,000 years ago, just after the last great ice age ended, something shifted. Some groups began to notice that certain plants grew back if you left them alone. That certain grasses produced seeds that could be stored, that if you kept a few animals close instead of hunting them, you didn't have to keep moving. This discovery, this tiny, ordinary, world-changing discovery was agriculture, and it would change everything. In a place called Göbekli Tepe, in what is now southern Turkey, something happened around 11,000 years ago that archaeologists still cannot fully explain. People built something, not a shelter. Not a simple camp, something massive, intentional, spiritual. Enormous stone pillars, some weighing 20 tons, were carved and dragged into position to form circles. On the pillars, animals were carved in beautiful detail. Foxes, scorpions, vultures, headless human bodies. Strange, haunting images that no one fully understands. This was not done by farmers with extra time on their hands. This was built before farming, before pottery, by hunter-gatherers. Think about what that means. These people, who had no writing, no cities, no metal tools, organized themselves. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, coming from far distances. They fed each other. They cooperated. They built something together that none of them could have built alone. Why? That is the question that haunts every archaeologist who has ever stood inside those stone circles. Was it religion? Was it a place to bury the dead? Was it a gathering point for different tribes? A monument to something they feared, something they worshipped? We don't know. We may never know. But on the night we're imagining, 10,000 years ago, someone stood inside those stones and felt something. Maybe fear, maybe awe, maybe both. A young man, a stranger from a tribe 3 days' walk to the white north, stood in the center of the circle and looked up at the stars. Around him, fires burned at the base of each pillar. People he didn't know sat in small groups, speaking languages he couldn't understand, and yet he understood exactly what this place was. It was a reminder that the world was bigger than any one tribe, bigger than any one life, that something had existed before them, and something would exist long after. He felt it as a weight in his chest, the kind of feeling you get standing at the edge of a cliff or watching a storm roll in from the cool sea. The feeling that you are very, very small, and that being small is not the worst thing in the world. That night, something was sacrificed at the center of the circle. Animals, most likely. Perhaps grains. An offering to whatever force had built the sky and filled it with fire. The sound of drums began. Low and steady, it moved through the ground like a heartbeat, and the people, strangers from a dozen different tribes, began to move together. For one night, they were not enemies. They were not competitors. They were just human. The world did not change overnight, but it was already changing. As the climate warmed, as the glaciers pulled back, as the land opened up, humans slowly, stumblingly, began to stay in one place, to plant seeds and wait for them to grow. To build walls not just for shelter, but for permanence. The first true villages appeared around 10 to 12,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent. Small, crowded, revolutionary. Houses of mud brick, storage pits full of grain, animals penned nearby, goats, pigs, cattle, sheep, slowly being bred into the domesticated forms we know today. It sounds like progress, And in many ways it was, but it came with a cost no one expected. When humans began living in close contact with animals and with each other, disease exploded. Illnesses that had never touched the scattered hunter-gatherers now swept through. Villages with terrible speed, measles, smallpox, influenza, all born from the closeness of people and their livestock. Skeletons from early farming communities tell a grim story. The farmers were shorter than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. Their bones show signs of harder, more repetitive labor. Their teeth, worse, their diets, narrower. Where the hunter-gatherer ate dozens of different plants and animals, the Ibu farmer ate mostly wheat and barley and little else. And yet, they kept farming. Because farming fed more mouths, more children survived. The population grew. Within just a few thousand years, a blink in the timeline of human history, everything would accelerate. Writing, metal, wheels, armies, empires. But all of it, every city, every war, every invention, every idea, had its roots in that moment. That first moment when someone knelt down in the dirt, pressed a seed into the earth, and decided to wait. That one decision, to stop running and stay, is the reason you're watching this right now. We think of ancient humans as primitive, as lesser, as people waiting to become us. But they were us. The same brains, the same fears, the same need to be loved, to belong, to make something that lasts beyond their own short lives. They painted on cave walls so we would remember them. They built stone circles for reasons we still don't understand. They walked through blizzards with their children on their backs, not because they were brave, but because stopping meant dying. And somewhere, in the oldest, quietest part of your mind, you still know what that feels like. The dark outside the firelight, the sound of something moving in the trees, the way a fire feels when you've been cold for too long. You carry them inside you. Every ancestor who survived a winter they shouldn't have. Every mother who kept walking. Every hunter who threw true. You are their answer. 10,000 years ago, someone sat where you are sitting now. They looked up at the same sky. They wondered what it all meant. And they kept going.